Welcome back. So in my code right now, you can see that I'm actually reusing a lot of these different things. Right here, I have the same duplicate code here, which is just creating a validator and using that default validation. I'm doing pretty much the same thing here. The only difference is I'm passing in a location this time with the name where here it was null, and I'm doing the same thing in the third method. So as this grows, I'll see this again and again and again for each of my validations that I'm doing for different properties. So let's try and maybe make a helper that can at least just generate this guy for me and return an action for me inside that helper for now. So let's jump to our Explorer and go into the test project, and I'll add a new area right here, and the directory is just going to be called helpers. There we go. And for now, let's just make a simple helper that's going to be called location validator helper. And let's actually call it test helper, just to kind of be precise that this has nothing to do with the location validator, it's just for testing purposes. There we go, let's add that. Now what do I want to do? Well, the first thing I want this location validator to do, the test helper right here, I wanted to kind of create one of these guys. Actually, I wanted to do something similar to this and return an action when it's done. So let's go and create that simple method inside our test helper right here. I'll create a new method and let's just call it, what are we doing? We're returning a default validation action. So let's just say public void, action, default validation action. Like this. And for now, let's just pass nothing in here. I'm going to create that location validator right here, and then I'm going to return that action when I'm done right here. Return that action. There we go. Now that was pretty simple. And now we can actually pass that back if we want to. Now let's just also change this into a var instead, because you don't need the iLocation right there. And another thing that I can do is I could actually pass in a location right here. Like this, I can pass in a location so I can actually be specific depending on the location. I can just pass that in here as the location. There we go. So now we have that available, and I'll now go and use this helper inside my setup. Let's try and go back to the code right here and look at my location validator test. What I want to do is, instead of doing this action right here, I can actually go with a one-liner, and I can, first of all, we need access to a public, let's just overwrite right here the constructor location validator test. There we go. So what I want to do is I want to make a local reference for this location test helper. Now we could also make it static or something like that. If that's your favorite, that's okay. So now we have this available. Now I can actually say location test helper dot default validation and pass in null, and then I can do should blah blah blah, and I can get rid of this, right? So we could make it in 2 lines, but I don't know. I just like this setup right here. Look at how simple that is to read now. And now I'll do the same down here. For now, let's just keep the actual location up there, but I can pass in that location right here now. There we go. I can get rid of this now. It makes it easier to read again. And let's do the same thing once more. There we go. We can go here and we can pass that in like this. And then we'll get rid of this guy and we'll pass in the location. Now I know you can do it a lot better than this probably, but now you kind of have an idea about how you can set it up. Now I'm also going to make a helper for my location. Again, I don't want this in here either. So let's just go and create a new helper for the location. So I'll make a new class, location test helper, like this. There we go. Now this guy is just going to be able to return location. Location like this, just to pass location back, and then I'll just return that location, return new location, where you can pass in the properties. Now we need to figure out how to pass in the properties, but it could be stuff like where you just say, first of all, I'm going to pass in a string name that's going to default to a blank string like this, etc., etc. And then we can start passing those in when we create the location. And I know that maybe this is overkill, and it's really up to you if you want to do it. I just feel that I like this to be in one area, so I can kind of pass it in from the outside. So now I can say location test helper, and I can just say dot location and pass in whatever information I want. And some information will be default, and some I can pass in, and that'll kind of remove the null keyword right here. Let's just try and add that to our new setup. Now, first of all, I don't need this guy anymore. I can just use the location helper. So I also need a reference for that guy. There we go, location test helper. And again, yes, I know this might be overkill. It's really up to you if you want to go this far. But I really feel that now I can pass in location like this. and I can down here, I can pass it in where I put in the A, and there we go, A like this, and we can get rid of location now. Yeah, man, I know it's starting to be a one-liner. Maybe you don't like that, maybe you like it, but let's just rerun all our tests to make sure that we didn't break anything at least before we commit this code. And if we didn't break anything, now we just kind of at least made the code a bit simpler to read. Now we do have some errors right here. It says object reference not set to an instance. Where we at? It seems the test validator is not sent to an instance right here. Let's have a look. Oh, of course not, because we didn't actually create that guy. Again, notice if I had committed that, somebody would have yelled at me. So I'm so lucky that I didn't do that before I ran all the unit tests. Let's try and run them all again. Another thing, notice how fast it is for me to kind of find my errors when you're getting used to this. All tests are passing, but notice now it's actually easier to read this. And of course, you probably can find a better way for you to write this. Go and write it on your own, find some better ways, but this is how you can start using these test helpers to help you out, actually figuring out these things. And you could probably even work with the throws and stuff like that to make it even simpler to reuse some of your code. Now notice, it just gets easier to read. I'll do the same for the other ones here with my test helper. I'll do the same for the service now to get rid of some of this mocking that I don't need. So that's it for this lesson. See you next time. Have fun.